Oil, gas, lithium. Those are the headlines, but the most valuable resource Canada controls doesn't come from underground. It's water. Canada holds nearly 1/5 of the world's fresh water, yet only a small fraction is accessible. That fact alone puts a target on the country's back. From private companies to US diplomats, Canada's water empire is under siege. In 2025, leaked US lobbying emails revived old pipeline dreams and turned water into a new flashpoint. Suddenly, Canada's fresh water isn't just a resource, it's a global bargaining chip. But how much of that water is actually usable, and why does the world see Canada as a reserve tank? Canada stands out as a freshwater superpower. With about 20% of the world's freshwater, it looks like an endless reserve on a map. But here's the reality. Only 7% of that water is renewable each year. That's the real limit. The rest is locked away in glaciers or deep lakes, not available for cities, farms, or industry. So, while the numbers sound impressive, the actual supply Canada can safely use is far smaller than most people think. Internationally, Canada is seen as a water reserve. Drought-stricken states and countries with water shortages see those blue patches and think solution. Donald Trump once called Canada a big faucet. The comparison isn't lost on anyone in the US Southwest. Water scarcity in states like California has revived old pipeline dreams. Since early 2025, leaked emails have shown that NWAPA, the North American Water and Power Alliance plan to divert Canadian rivers south, is back on the table. The urgency is real. The World Bank now predicts water will be the world's most sought-after resource in 2025, and that's not just a future problem. It's here. But the idea that Canada's water is just sitting there, ready to be tapped, doesn't hold up. WWF Canada reports that most of Canada's watersheds aren't even monitored, and Dr. David Schindler warned years ago that our bank account yields almost no interest. The data that does exist shows many major watersheds are already stressed or degraded. The renewable portion, the 7%, is what keeps ecosystem alive and community supplied. That's the part under threat, not the frozen reserves. Meanwhile, the pressure ramps up. The United States has a population nearly 10 times Canada's and far greater industrial demand. From their perspective, Canada's reluctance to share water looks like an obstacle. Trade deals like CUSMA could even open the door to classifying water as a commodity, making it harder to keep those resources protected. There's a disconnect between the global image of Canada as a water-rich paradise and the reality at home. Many Indigenous communities still lack clean drinking water. The real story isn't about abundance, it's about the limits of what's truly available and the pressure to export what little is renewable. This tension isn't just an international headline. It's playing out inside Canada's borders, where the so-called water superpower struggles to provide for its own citizens, while outsiders eye what's left. The bottled water industry in Canada has turned water extraction into a high-profit, low-cost business. Companies like Blue Triton, formerly Nestlé, pull millions of liters out of Canadian aquifers every day. The provinces charge almost nothing for this privilege. Ontario's rate is just $4 per million liters. These are the numbers that let corporations pay pennies for a resource they sell for billions. You can watch tanker trucks siphon aquifer water past communities whose taps have been unsafe for decades. Neskantaga First Nation has lived under a boil water advisory since 1995. The Council of Canadians calls it water colonialism. It's hard to argue with that label. British Columbia tried to clamp down by banning bulk water exports after public pressure, but the bottling loophole remains. The Sunbelt case in the 1990s made the stakes clear. An American company sued the BC government for $10.5 billion. Blue Triton was paying $504 a year to extract 1.2 million liters per day from a single Ontario well. Canada's legal framework for water exports is a patchwork. There's no national law banning bulk exports. This is the extraction problem. It's a system where business wins, communities lose. America's interest in Canadian water isn't new. The North American Water and Power Alliance, NWAPA, was first floated in the 1950s. In early 2025, leaked emails showed that advisors from Trump's circle were actively discussing ways to bring NWAPA back. Trump himself called Canada's water a very large faucet, referring to the snowmelt running off British Columbia's peaks. The Columbia River Treaty is another pressure point. In 2024, the U.S. abruptly paused negotiations to modernize the treaty. The real danger is legal, not just political. Experts warn that under CUSMA, water could be classified as a good. Attempts to create a national ban have failed before. The 1988 Canada Water Preservation Act died when Parliament dissolved. Drought maps from 2024 show California's reservoirs at record lows and Arizona facing historic shortages. What changed in 2025 is the level of coordination. Leaked emails revealed U.S. politicians working with Canadian industry groups. The threat isn't military, it's legal and economic. One tribunal ruling or treaty amendment could open the tap. That brings us to the state of Canada's water laws, because what's on the books right now isn't nearly as strong as most people think. Canada's legal framework for water protection is full of gaps. The Transboundary Waters Protection Act blocks bulk water transfers between river basins that cross the U.S. border, but that's the limit. It doesn't cover bottled water exports, groundwater pumping, or beverage production. Companies can still pull millions of liters from aquifers and ship it out in containers, all within the law. Provincial bans exist, but they allow beverage exports and issue well licenses with little oversight. The loophole is obvious, and it's not just a technicality. This is how the system works. The Canada Water Agency was set up in 2023 to coordinate freshwater policies, but it cannot enforce or set binding regulations. It has no authority to stop exports or impose national standards. It operates as a central office for data and funding while companies keep extracting water. British Columbia banned bulk water exports after public backlash, but bottling plants still send water south legally. The difference between bulk and bottled is just paperwork. The environmental impact is the same. Trade law is the real risk. Under CUSMA, water isn't clearly excluded from being classified as a good. Experts like Wendy Holm warn that if water is treated as a tradable good, Canada could be forced to export it under trade obligations. The Sunbelt case makes this risk clear. A U.S. company sued British Columbia for $10.5 billion under NAFTA after being blocked from exporting water, arguing discrimination. BC settled because the legal threat was too great. Provincial rules are inconsistent and full of exceptions. Quebec allows bulk exports if the water generates electricity. Nova Scotia's cabinet can approve exceptions. Alberta and Manitoba can override their own bans. New Brunswick has no protections at all. This patchwork lets companies look for the weakest law and exploit it. Canada's repeated attempts at a comprehensive ban have failed. The 1988 Canada Water Preservation Act died in Parliament. The current laws focus on how water moves, not how much is taken or the impact. Politicians claim water is protected, but the legal reality is far weaker. This is the legal landscape facing Canada as pressure builds. Canada's water future isn't just about policy gaps, it's about choices under growing pressure. Global demand for water will outpace supply by 40% by the end of this decade, according to the TIE. Critics like hydrologist Tricia Stadnick call it a David versus Goliath fight, with provinces holding the power and Ottawa largely sidelined. Without a national plan, loopholes stay open and bottling companies keep exporting. So here's the question: should Canada push for a federal water export ban or let provinces call the shots? Would you support amending CUSMA to clearly exempt water? Tell us what you think in the comments and hit subscribe for more on Canada's resource politics.